People rarely realize what your silence means until it's too late. They don't understand what your distance represents, not until it starts echoing in their life louder than your words ever did. At first, they mistake your calm for confusion, your quiet for hesitation, your patience for weakness. They genuinely believe you're still there, emotionally available, mentally reachable, always ready to bend your boundaries just to keep the peace. But what they didn't know was this. You weren't being quiet because you were lost. You were being quiet because you finally found yourself. And once a man finds himself, he stops explaining, stops negotiating, stops carrying dead relationships on his back. You didn't disappear to hurt them. You disappeared because being near them was hurting you. And that's the part they never expected. When you walked out of their life, you didn't slam a door. You didn't throw words you'd regret. You simply removed yourself. And your absence became heavier than your presence ever was. At first, they told themselves you'd return, that you'd get emotional, that you'd feel guilty, that eventually you'd remember all the moments you stayed when you should have left. They counted on your softness. They counted on your empathy. They counted on the part of you that cared too much. But what they forgot is that even the kindest man has a breaking point. Even the most patient man has a moment when he decides, I'm done carrying what isn't mine. And the day you chose yourself over the chaos they brought, that day changed everything. Your silence became the mirror they avoided for years. It forced them to face something uncomfortable. It wasn't you who needed them. It was them who needed you. Because without you, their world didn't just feel emptier. It felt smaller. Suddenly, the confidence they flaunted cracked. The ego they hid behind began to shake. The arrogance they used to defend themselves collapsed under its own weight. Why? Because you were the stability they never valued. You were the calm they never understood. You were the one holding the emotional structure together while they took the credit for the foundation. People don't appreciate presence until absence hits them like a cold truth they can't unfeel. And your absence, it didn't just hit, it transformed. It made them realize how much effort you carried silently, how much peace you protected without asking for anything, how much understanding you gave even when you were exhausted. They realized your silence wasn't empty. It was full of every unspoken truth they never wanted to hear. Your distance wasn't cold. It was the first warm place you created for yourself after leaving their storm. And your detachment wasn't revenge. It was self-respect finally waking up. But the deepest part of this story, it's the way they began to respect you, only after they lost access to you. Because when you were available, they felt entitled. When you communicated, they felt superior. When you tried to fix things, they felt safe taking advantage. But when you stopped responding, when you stopped engaging, when you stopped giving, they felt the truth. They realized how much you provided simply by being there. Your presence, your energy, your loyalty, your steadiness. And that realization changed the way they spoke about you. Even in their own mind, they stopped bragging about moving on. They stopped pretending they didn't care. They stopped acting like losing you meant nothing. Quietly, privately, internally, they began to acknowledge the role you played in their life. Not because they matured, not because they grew, but because your absence exposed the parts of themselves they never wanted to face. They started replaying conversations, Moments where you were calm while they were chaotic. Moments where you chose peace while they chose pride. Moments where your kindness should have been enough for them to wake up. And now, every time they meet someone new, they notice something missing. The depth, the emotional strength, the consistency, the patience, the quiet understanding you carried so effortlessly. Everyone else feels temporary, shallow, too loud, too self-centered. Because once a man of your depth walks out of their life, everything after him feels like a downgrade. People respect what they can't replace, and they couldn't replace you, not because you were perfect, but because you were genuine in a world obsessed with pretending. Your silence, your distance, your refusal to return. It all became a silent lesson they carry, but never talk about. Some nights, they still think about reaching out, typing a message, trying to start a conversation, pretending they've changed. But they don't, because deep down, they know the man who once tolerated excuses no longer exists. The version of you who forgave too easily is gone. The version who explained himself has grown past that. The version who accepted crumbs has turned into the man who demands the whole meal. Not through words, but through self-respect. You became someone they cannot approach the same way. Someone they cannot manipulate the same way. Someone they cannot emotionally influence the same way. You outgrew the version of them that once felt big in your life. And that is your quiet victory. You didn't win by fighting. You didn't win by arguing. You didn't win by proving a point. You won by elevating. Your growth became the closure they never expected. Your healing became the answer to every question they wanted you to ask. Your peace became louder than any explanation you could have given. People talk big about respect, but the truth is simple. Respect follows the man who follows his standards. And that's exactly what you did. You stopped returning to the same cycles. You stopped opening doors for people who left you outside. You stopped trying to fix people who benefited from staying broken. And that shift, that boundary, that transformation is why your name sits differently in their memory now. Not as someone they lost, but as someone they were never ready for. They speak about you softer now, more carefully, more respectfully, because time humbled them. Silence educated them. Distance matured them. And you became the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Calm, grounded, self-respecting, and untouchable. You didn't leave to prove a point. You left because keeping yourself small for their comfort was no longer an option. You didn't abandon them. You simply stopped abandoning yourself. And that is the real evolution. That is the real revenge. That is the real healing. Not the anger, not the bitterness, not the noise, but the quiet growth that turned you into a man they can't reach anymore. They respect you now, not because you asked for it, but because you became the kind of man who earns it by being who he is. Your silence became powerful. Your boundaries became non-negotiable. And your distance became the lesson they'll remember for the rest of their life. Because there's nothing louder than a man who walks away and becomes better without looking back.